afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan and welcome to the latest episode of our sports show. As you know, we've been featuring live on air for the last month or so about our upcoming documentary that we're going to release soon called Global Rugby Legends, My Life in Rugby, where we look into some of the top prominent players from the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere. So when we think of Southern Hemisphere, we think of Australia, South Africa and New Zealand and the recently joined Argentina as well. And when we think of the Northern Hemisphere, obviously we have Ireland, Wales, England, Scotland, France and Italy. So in this feature, we're going to be speaking to a whole load of players in a variety of different positions from a variety of different countries to take their unique perspective on rugby and their highs, the lows starting off in terms of childhood and how did rugby develop for them and how did rugby finish up for them, any sort of positive from the positivity to the regrets and to all time due to their joy of playing the sport. And our special guest this evening is an Irish player, an Irish international. In fact, probably one of the most renowned players in Ireland has gone on, apart from Conor O'Shea, to manage teams abroad outside of Ireland as well. He's managed the Dragons in Wales and he's also managed Grenoble in France, something that is unique. And I know Ronan O'Gara has tried recently in terms of managing on that time. It's the one and only Bernard Jackman. And Bernard Jackman, as we know, he's played for Ireland on 9 times. He's played for Connacht on numerous times as well, and Leinster as well. And he was a big part of Leinster's Heineken Cup success in 07 and 08 and their Celtic League title as well. But Bernard, I was looking there, you sort of grew up in Tullow in County Carlow and you sort of played with Lansdowne and Clontarf. But the early days you played with Newbridge College, and was it Newbridge College that you first fell in love with rugby, became a follower of rugby? Growing up in Tulla, I imagine it's a small place in Carlow. What was the main attractions there? Was it soccer? Was it GA, football, sort of hurling? Was there a rugby option there for a young Bernard Jackman, or was it when he went to secondary school in Newbridge that he was first introduced to the rugby ball?
Yeah, so basically I live in a little village called Coolkenno, 5 miles outside Tullow. So I had no access to rugby. There's no sport really in my family at all, but except I started to play Gaelic football from a local village, Coolkenno. Played that until played it all the way till I was 22. But so in the summers I would go home from boarding school and play Gaelic football with my friends and my parish. But when I went to Newbridge College, rugby was compulsory in first year, and as a boarder there, I was mad keen to try all sports, so jumped into it, played the first game on the A's on the wing, and then second game wing forward, and then the third year I was moved into hooker for the junior cup team. So only for my parents sent me to boarding school, I never would have came across rugby. I know Sean O'Brien came from Tullow, but his father played for Tullow, his uncles played for Tullow. I never would have been brought in there, to be honest. So that was a blessing for me. And then I left school, went to DCU, study international marketing in Japanese, and joined Lansdowne. I wasn't a Leinster schoolboy or an Irish schoolboy, so my ambition was to just play club rugby. And I played under 20s there. And at the end of the season, I ended up in the seconds. And Brent Pope, who's well known in Ireland as a rugby commentator, a rugby pundit, was there one Sunday watching Lansdowne, I think against Wanderers, seconds match. He came to look at a winger, and I impressed him, and he needed a hooker as well. And in the bar afterwards, he said, "Look, would you consider coming to Clontarf?" And because it was near DCU, it kind of made sense for me. And playing in Clontarf under Brent, we got promoted that year to Division 1. I ended up being captain the second year, and then I got a contract to play for Connacht the first year, rugby web professional in Ireland. So fell into it really, and had an unbelievable good time playing professional rugby in Connacht Sale Sharks. I did 2 years of Sale Sharks. I won a Challenge Cup in Sale Sharks in 2001-2002 season, and then I was part of that Six Nations. I have a Grand Slam medal from 2009. So I have the full Monty. I have the Six Nations, the Heineken Cup, the Challenge Cup, and the Magners League. So very, very fortunate.
And I suppose, Bernard, in terms of growing up in Tullow and Carlow, and you mentioned there about playing with Connacht. At that time, when rugby was less just turning professional, where you sort of had another job at the time, did you travel from Dublin down to Galway to train every week 2 or 3 times a week, or did you move at that stage and move over to Galway and live closer to?
It was interesting. So the first year, the season was very short. There was a thing called the Celtic Cup, and then there was the Interprovincials and the Challenge Cup. But basically, the whole season wrapped up by Christmas. So Gatland, because we all didn't have full-time contracts, Gatland was happy for us to train in wherever we lived, Dublin or Galway, in the mornings and be under supervised training for weights or conditioning. And some of the lads were working as well, so they did it before work. And then we used to meet in that loan on a Tuesday, Thursday, train there at night for a rugby session. And then on a Friday, if we're playing a home game, we would do a captain's run in Galway on a Friday evening, stay in a hotel, play Saturday, do a session Sunday morning, video recovery, and then go back to either our houses in Galway or Dublin, and then back again on the Tuesday. So that was the case for the first year. And then the second year, the RFU gave everybody more contracts, so it became necessary to live in Galway for longer. And I moved down to Galway the second year, which coincided with my last year in university. But Gatland I did a deal with Warren Gatland, even though he wasn't the coach anymore. He ended up getting the Irish job. That there'll be some flexibility around exams and things like that. So I managed to finish my degree. But yeah, the second year I was kind of living in Galway, but in college in Dublin, it wasn't really ideal.
Yeah, and obviously in terms of that, you're starting off rugby, had just sort of turned professional. So first year, I imagine the wages were probably average enough, nothing sort of spectacular starting off as well. So was it a sort of financial burden as well for the early sort of 1 or 2 years at Connacht before things start to blossom for yourself in terms of trying to make that professional career, that rise for yourself? Was it a strain? Was there many times that you had to do long commutes and you felt to yourself, is this a bit too much I'm taking on?
No, look at that. To be honest, I was getting a few bob for playing something that I was doing for free. So my first contract was £7,500 retainer, split over 12 months, and then if we were in a match day squad, I think we got 450, and then a win bonus of 450. So look, it wasn't a huge amount of money, but I was delighted. And second year, then when I went professional, I got 25,000. That was a flat rate. So Eric Elwood got 25,000. Anthony Foley got 25,000. It was just, that was it. And then obviously, then year 3, then people started to be able to negotiate a little bit more. But to be honest, and I hear a lot of people critical of the women's contracts at the moment in Ireland. But as I said, I started small. We all did, because we knew it was the early days of professionalism, and we were happy to. You had a choice. You either stayed in your job and didn't take the contract, or you did. But to be honest, we were so happy to be training full time, to be getting the opportunity better time, or to go and play the Cardiff Blues, or go to Glasgow or Edinburgh or whatever. Was there was no one giving out about money. You were delighted to get the chance to take a professional contract.
I suppose Bernard will sort of jump on now. Obviously, the opportunity came for you to go to the Sale Sharks over in England. How did that opportunity arise, and was it an offer that you couldn't really resist at the time to try yourself in the English Premiership? Yeah,
so I kind of probably got frustrated with the fact at the time you couldn't move province. So the RFU basically said, look, where you are, you stay. And I was like, this isn't really ideal, because I'm a Leinster man. Originally, Leinster were interested in me. I was finishing my degree. My club team was Clontarf. There was an opportunity to come to Leinster, but the RFU were like, no, we don't want any movement, because the bigger provinces will take from the smaller provinces. So I got a bit thick and stubborn about it. So I got an agent. Jordan Murphy was a Newbridge College man. He was in England. He had an agent called Justin Page. So I rang him and said, look, will you take me on, find me a club in England? And Sale Sharks signed me, which was brilliant. I signed a 2-year contract. And at that stage, the Premiership was probably a step ahead. There was a lot of Irish players playing in the Premiership, particularly London Irish. It was in my opinion, it was a better league at the time. And I just felt as a young rugby player, the chance to go and play against the likes of Leicester or Wasps or London Irish, and big games, most weeks. Whereas the league structure in Ireland at the time, the Celtic League was a little bit up in the air. It didn't really settle down. So that was how I ended up there. And I had 2 years, and I was offered a new contract actually by Steve Diamond. He wanted me to sign me on a 3-year deal, and was going to look at converting me to a prop. And I just said, look, I've been involved with Ireland in 98. I toured South Africa. And when I went to England, I was completely out of the loop. And I just said, look, if I want to get capped for Ireland, I need to go home. So I went back to Ireland. I went back to Connacht.
And obviously you went back to Connacht. Was there an option when you're going back, maybe to go back to Leinster first before you got to join Leinster eventually? You went back to Connacht, you had another 52 appearances. Yeah. Did IRFU was the only option coming back from Sale to go back to Connacht and then find your route to Leinster?
No, so like at this stage, the rule was like I was a free agent by going to England. I basically navigated that rule, but that rule actually was gone anyway because it was stupid. So I could have went to Leinster. I had an offer to go to Leinster, but Eddie O'Sullivan was the Irish coach, and he called me one day and he said, look, I know you have an offer from Leinster and Connacht. In my opinion, it makes more sense for you to go back to Connacht because you'll be a starter there. Whereas in Leinster, you'll be battling with Shane Byrne. And, I want to have Rory Best in Ulster. I want to have Frankie Sheen or Keith Wood in Munster and Shane Byrne in Leinster and you in Connacht. So I got 4 hookers playing every week who were eligible for Ireland. So it was probably based on his recommendation that I went back again. And it worked out really well, to be honest. I mean, I ended up being captain. Michael Bradley was the coach. Played some really good rugby. Got into a lot of squads for Ireland, but just couldn't get that first cap. And ironically, I signed for Leinster in March 2005. And I got capped for Ireland in June 2005. So I was still technically a Connacht player until the 1st of July, when I got my first cap. So I really appreciate the impact and influence they had on my career. But then I went to Leinster in July.
And obviously you went to Leinster when a time rugby in the provinces was taking off. We had Ulster's rise, and obviously then Munster's rise. And obviously after that, sort of Leinster were sort of looking on enviously at the rise of Ulster and then Munster. But then it was their sort of turn to shine. So you sort of came to Leinster at the time that Leinster were beginning to hit their sort of mojo and beginning to sort of announce themselves as a real contender on the European stage.
Yeah, I did, but we also fell to the seed, to be honest. So Michael Cheika came. So Declan Kidney actually signed me for Connacht, but I never got to work under him signed me for Leinster, but I never got to work under him in Leinster because he went to Munster. He went back to Munster before I got there. So it was Michael Cheika came in, a young coach from Ramwick with a fellow called David Knox, and they had us playing brilliant rugby, a real kind of Australian Ramwick style of rugby, and we put together some phenomenal performances, real free-flowing stuff. The second year we beat Toulouse away in a quarter-final in the Heineken Cup, had a home semi-final against Munster in Lansdowne Road, the old Lansdowne Road. Sellout, massive hype, and we flattered to deceive. We were badly beaten. It's known by Leinster fans as Black Sunday. That's how bad we were. And Cheika then started really focusing on kind of changing the dynamic of the team, being less back driven, more of a balance between forwards and backs, and looking to toughen us up as a forward pack in particular, because our backs were brilliant. And at that stage it was the Munster pack with the Leinster backline was the Irish team effectively, and it would obviously Raj in the middle of it. But it was 2008 then we won a Magners League, and then 2009 we had that big semi-final against Munster in Croke Park where they were hot favourites, and it was do or die for Leinster. If we didn't win that day, I think that Leinster team would have broke up. Cheika probably would have left, and who knows, the big French clubs were looking at Brian O'Driscoll, etc., etc. So obviously now everyone says, oh sure, it's logical that Leinster are better than Munster because of the population bias. But back then, they had an unbelievable team, and we were scratching and trying to topple them, and thankfully we did that day in Croke Park, and obviously we went on to the final and won it. And Leinster have won 4 since and been back to 2 finals I think they've lost in.
And I suppose, Bernard, bringing you on to Ireland in obviously 9 appearances, but it was the tour of Japan when you got your first cap twice in 2005. And 2005, it was a significant year for you in terms of the highs and lows. Cap twice for Ireland in that tour of Japan, but you also suffered a broken leg as well.
Yeah, I did. But look, I was delighted to get my first cap, and I just got married. So our honeymoon was in Japan, and then we went to Malaysia after that. My wife's very patient. And yeah, look, to be honest, so I toured Ireland. I toured South Africa with Ireland in '98. So 7 years before I got capped, and I barred those 2 years in Japan in Sale. I'd say I was in 90% of the squads, you know, as the third choice hooker, and it's nearly unbelievable that you would spend that long and not get into a match day 22-3, and then it was 22 at the time, and then get on. So, but I didn't, and I actually just wanted to get one cap. I was paranoid that I would finish without one. So getting that first one Japan, and then second one Japan was brilliant. And then, you know, obviously I knuckled down and tried to get a few more, but I was competing with some very good players. I mean, Rory Best, Jerry Flannery, you know, Keith Wood, Shane Byrne. I mean, there was lots of competition, and I only got 9 in the end. But to be honest, I'm glad to have got one.
I suppose probably the highlight for you for your Ireland career was the 2008 Six Nations Championship. You featured in all the games in that 2008 championship for Ireland. And obviously, did you feel at that time that you were playing your best rugby? If you're international, obviously your international career, but you felt obviously it was that the time you felt you were sort of week in, week out, every second week mentality, that you were probably one of the names on the team sheet?
Yeah, I know it was. Look, I got Player of the Year in Leinster 2008. It was definitely my best year in terms of form. And I just look at I got an injury-free run. Was probably peaking in terms of age, more confidence. You know, having played 3 years of Heineken Cup rugby with Leinster, playing with, you know, quality players, and kind of realizing that, you know, you deserve to be here. And maybe I kind of had that lack of real self-belief holding me back, but that was certainly the best year of my career. And then in 2009, my body started to break a little bit, and my knee had a good bit of I couldn't really train on the field because I had knee cartilage issue, and that was the best year I had in terms of playing, and thankfully I got to play in that year Six Nations, which was class to be part of it.
Bernard, before we finish up, we've spoken about the highs, and now I want to bring to you about a serious sort of low. You retired in 2010 with a concussion injury, a serious concussion injury, and we know concussion injuries are prominent now. And then you became a member of the acquired brain injury of Ireland. Can you tell us about that concussion? Did you really blacken out? Was it a serious concussion for you, and what was the road to recovery like after it?
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, to be honest, concussions rather than the big one. You know, I think in 2004 I had a very big concussion playing for Connacht, and I missed about a month, and I had a lot of issues with migraines and sensitivity to light, and you know, just trying really hard to shake it off. But then I got back fine, and it was just 2009, 2010. I noticed my susceptibility to concussion decreased a lot. So a knock or a tackle or a scrum that previously wouldn't have had any effect was giving me concussion-like symptoms. So, you know, the team doctor realized that I was, you know, suffering a little bit in terms of the multitude of concussions that I was getting. And in fairness to him, he said, look, I don't think it'd be wise for you to, you know, to sign another contract. You're going to have to retire. So he took it out of my hands, to be fair to him. And you know what? I was very lucky. Even though I was getting a lot of these, you know, smaller concussions, I wasn't getting any symptoms. So, but around that time, there was a lot of news in the media about the NFL, you know, and the repercussions of and long-term side effects of concussion. So I joined Acquired Brain Injury Ireland to try and work with them to help people be more aware of the dangers of concussion, because I felt as players we still had an old school macho attitude to, you know, that's not going to stop me playing, you know, a broken arm would stop me, a cruciate would stop me, but concussion is something that I can just carry on with. So that was my motivation, to be honest. A huge amount of work has been done. Concussions in the news every day now, or every second day, with some kind of research being released. And I think players now have a much better understanding of the importance of looking after yourself post concussion. So I was probably one of the first to do it, but my motivation was to just help educate players better and make sure that they were aware of how important it is that you look after yourself.
Finally, Bernard, I feel time is nearly caught up on us now. Just lastly, if Bernard Jackman was looking in the mirror now and he saw the rugby player from maybe 10 or 12 years ago standing in his reflection across the mirror from him, how would you describe that rugby player to sum him up in terms of his attributes?
Resilient, tough, hopefully, and good fun to be around.
Good fun to be around. On that note, Bernard Jackman, an absolute pleasure talking about your life story from humble beginnings in a village outside Tulla, Carlow, to representing your country 9 times, featuring prominently in the 2008 Six Nation Championships, achieving European Challenge Cup success with Sale Sharks, achieving a Heineken Cup success with Leinster, playing 91 appearances for Leinster, 20 points as well. Obviously, played for Ireland underage and under 21 as well. Capped twice for the Tour of Japan, capped in the Tour of Argentina, went in the cap of South Africa. A resilience as well to show, never give up on the dream. 1998 in the Irish squad, never give up. Got his opportunity 2005, took it and never looked back. Bernard Jackman, an absolute pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. All right.